The moment that I first heard this chord right here, I knew I was going to be hooked on this game. Persona 3 Reload, which I'm just going to call Persona 3 for the rest of this video, immediately hit me with a vibe that I'd never encountered in a game before. It's early 2000s high school life in Japan, filled with catchy music, awkward friendships, and ordinary teenage problems. But underneath all of this is this creeping sense of despair. So not too different from life in 2026, really. And this wasn't only my first time playing Persona 3, this was my first Persona game ever. I had no nostalgia for the original or the series really at all, no idea what to expect, and absolutely no clue why everybody was pointing guns at their heads. I mean, I'd always been curious about the series, but the enormous time commitment was really intimidating, and I'm somebody who has to finish one game before moving on to another. And when you start a game like Persona, it quickly becomes the only thing you're playing. Because after nearly 60 hours, Persona 3 completely changed what I expect from some of the smaller moments in a JRPG. I started the game believing the high school life and relationships would simply just connect the major story events and turn-based battles, but by the end, I realized those ordinary days weren't distractions from the real game. They were the entire point. So before we get to the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave your comments down below. Have you played Persona 3 or Persona 3 Reload or Persona 3 Portable? I would love to know your thoughts and your comments on my first time experience playing Persona for the first time. So let's get to it. Spoilers towards the end of the video so you can watch most of this and still go into the game without knowing too much if you wanted to play it totally fresh. Let's go. Before starting Persona 3, my understanding of the series was fairly basic. I thought Persona was essentially a day-to-day slice-of-life high school simulator with some turn-based battles woven through it. You go to class, you make some friends, take exams, and then occasionally head to a dungeon and fight some monsters. That was more or less the extent of my knowledge, and although that sounded interesting, I wasn't completely sure whether or not it would hold my attention across such a massive game. Persona 3 seemed like the obvious starting point for me, especially with the Reload edition, because this was the newest and most accessible version of Persona. I mean, it came out in 2024, we're 2026 right now. I had no previous attachment to the original presentation for the PlayStation 2 version, so I wasn't entering the game with any expectations about what had been changed or removed, modernized, or as some of you like to say, censored. I just wanted to experience a Persona game in a form that felt current and welcoming, and in that sense, Reload was probably the perfect entry point. And it feels incredibly fitting that while I was taking my first steps in this series, I was also fortunate enough to be featured in Atlus's Persona 30th Anniversary Creator Look Back. Being included in a celebration of a series I was only just beginning to understand was really something special, and I'm delighted to finally be here sharing my own thoughts on Persona for the first time. So let's talk story, because Persona 3 wastes like no time showing you that things are deeply wrong in this world. You play as Makoto Yuki, and you can give it another name, but when a character has been around for as long as he has and already has a canonical name, I usually just go with that. Makoto is a student who transfers to Iwato-dai and moves into a local student dorm. Although the game never gives a particularly detailed reason for why he ends up there, but what does become important much later on is his connection to the city and the events that took place there 10 years earlier. Now, almost immediately after arriving, you experience the mysterious Dark Hour, a hidden period of time that exists between one day and the next. The streets are empty, the atmosphere is completely unnatural, and regular people have been transformed into these coffins that just stand upright. It's really grim for sure, and immediately raises about 500 questions that the game has no intention of answering, at least straight away. And then the sun comes up, and then everything changes. You go to school, meet your classmates, explore the city, and begin settling into a completely new and ordinary routine. The colors become bright, the music becomes warm and welcoming, and your biggest concern is, do I know the answer to a question in class? That contrast between the horrifying imagery of the Dark Hour and the relaxed and chilled high school atmosphere was the first moment where I thought, okay, this game is actually doing something that I really haven't seen anywhere else before, at least yet. The central setup is that most people are unaware of the Dark Hour, but a small group of students can remain conscious during it, and they just happen to live in your dorm. Very convenient, right? Now, during this hidden hour, the school transforms into an enormous tower known as the Tartarus, and creatures called shadows begin showing up. You eventually join the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, or SEAS, who enter the Tartarus to investigate the shadows and figure out why the Dark Hour exists in the first place. And again, very convenient that everybody who is in this group lives in the same dorm, and you also go to school with them too. The story develops gradually, and for a large portion of the game, you're operating without a complete understanding of what is actually happening. Each full moon brings a new major encounter. Tartarus continues opening up, and the mystery surrounding the Dark Hour, they slowly start to connect. It is absolutely a story that takes its time, and there were sections where I wanted the central plot to move so much faster than it was. However, that slower pace also allows the world to become familiar before anything else starts falling apart. That familiarity matters because Persona 3 is constantly balancing the supernatural with the ordinary. Because one night you might be fighting some massive shadow during the Dark Hour, and then the following morning you're doing an exam. Things are just constantly changing, and it's such a big contrast from moment to moment. These characters aren't heroes traveling across an enormous fantasy world like you would think of, when you think of any JRPG, really. Everybody here they're just normal students who still have exams and responsibilities, friendships and personal problems waiting for them when the sun comes up and everything goes back to normal. And to touch on your party, like I mentioned, you live with them and you go to school with them and gradually watch their relationships develop around the dorm. At first, they do feel like a group brought together by circumstance, but over the course of the story, they become much closer, much more tight-knit, and that growing sense of connection becomes maybe the most important part of Persona 3. The daily life of Persona 3 is admittedly what surprised me the most, but I'm going to be totally honest, not every single moment was entirely 100% captivating, and I think that's okay. There were also sections where the game's length began really getting to me, and I wanted to push time forward rather than just spending another evening improving a character stat or visiting the same locations doing the same things. But when the daily life system worked, it became the part of the game that I cared about the most. You attend school, answer questions, take exams, develop personal qualities such as courage, charm, and academics. And after school, you decide how to use the limited time available to you. You can explore the city, visit shops, or work on one of those personal qualities, or spend time with somebody that you know or go to school with, or somebody that you met in town. These relationships are represented by social links, and each one tells a smaller story, almost like a vignette that unfolds across multiple meetings with the same person. Mechanically, improving a social link strengthens a particular arcana, which is like a tarot card that allows your personas, your special powers, to unlock new powers, and then you can start fusing and stuff like that. That part is useful, but it was really never the main reason I continued spending time with these characters. I just wanted to know what happened to them. But there were plenty of afternoons where I cared more about seeing what happened in the social link than making further progress through the Tartarus. I could have spent that time improving my character or preparing for the next major battle by grinding, but instead I just wanted to check in on the people that I've become invested in. That is where Persona 3 finally clicked for me. The social links aren't merely optional side stories placed inside Persona 3. Emotionally, they are Persona 3. You can technically ignore many of them and continue advancing the main plot, but doing that would mean missing that part of the game that gives a lot of the themes weight. The battle against the shadows and the climb through the Tartarus, sure, yes, might be the central conflict, but these smaller relationships are what show you why the world and the time you spend inside it actually matter. Now, hey, before we talk any more Persona, hey, I would really encourage you to subscribe if you aren't already. Big retrospectives and reviews like this take a lot of time, and I would really appreciate your support. So if you want to see more of them and hang out with each and every video that I put out every week, I would love to have you here. Now, let's talk about the calendar system, because initially, when I first started the game, I thought this was really going to stress me out. Every action uses time, and you can't just complete every activity whenever you feel like it. If you spend an afternoon with one person, you might not have another opportunity to meet somebody else for another couple of days. Certain social links are only available at particular times as well, so some activities depend on your personal stats, and the game keeps moving whether you have used every day efficiently or not. I progressed through the game naturally and gradually accepted that I'm not going to see absolutely everything in one playthrough, and that's okay. I spent the time with the people I found interesting, raised my stats when it felt useful, and then went to the Tartarus whenever I felt prepared to make some more meaningful progress. I never felt like one bad decision had completely destroyed my playthrough. Instead, my version of the protagonist simply developed certain relationships while leaving others unfinished, and somebody else could play this game while spending their time in a completely different way, and it really is an experience you can choose for yourself. That repeated rhythm did become slightly exhausting in the middle of the game. You go to school, spend time with people, make another trip to the Tartarus, and wait for the next full moon event. So eventually you'll understand how this rotation works. And look, there were moments where I wanted to pursue the story and some of the more exciting moments more aggressively. This really is a slow burn overall. And that's where Persona 3 changed how I think about downtime in a JRPG. I mean, many games, downtime is simply the material between major story events. In Persona 3, downtime represents the overwhelming majority of the experience, and the entire game is built around what you choose to do with it. I mean, put it this way, life isn't only made up of major events, right? It's also made up of mornings, afternoons, meals, work, conversations, and ordinary days that seem insignificant while you're living through them. Persona 3 does a really great job at turning a lot of these smaller moments into something special because the calendar is always moving forward, just like real life. So you have limited time with these people and limited time in these events, so make the most of it. Now, the TARDIS is an interesting concept both mechanically and within the story. Rather than traveling through a series of completely separate dungeons, Persona 3 gives you one big tower that continues expanding as the game progresses. Each time another major story event passes, new sections open up and you can climb a little bit higher. I really like the sense of scale that's created. TARDIS doesn't feel like a location you clear once and then you leave behind. It's always there, actually, physically and then metaphorically towering above everything during the game and then the dark hour, and then reminding you that, hey, look, central mystery that's happening behind you is still not solved. Every time you believe you've made significant progress, another section appears and the tower changes completely. That doesn't mean it avoids repetition though. I mean, the floors are procedurally arranged and you spend a lot of time running through the same looking corridor, fighting the same enemies, searching for the same looking staircase that goes to the next floor up. There were sessions where that became very tedious, particularly when I was already eager to see the next story event. At other times though, the TARDIS became pretty strangely relaxing. I mean, I could enter the tower, fight some enemies, collect some items, and gradually work towards the next barrier without thinking too deeply where I was going. Once I settled into that rhythm, it became a really straightforward way to spend an evening while watching the party grow stronger, and it was also great for putting on a YouTube video, listening to some gaming podcasts or news, and just grinding away. For a game this long, I think the TARDIS mostly succeeds at being what it is because it supports the overall journey so well rather than feeling like a disconnected dungeon. So even when the individual floors and the moment-to-moment grinding and stuff might not have held my attention as much as I would have liked, I really enjoyed what the TARDIS represented overall for the game. The battle system is built around identifying and exploiting enemy weaknesses. You enter combat with characters who have access to different attacks and elemental abilities and personas, and hitting the correct weakness knocks an enemy down, and doing this allows you to continue the momentum with some all-out attacks. They are quick and stylish and super fun, especially when you completely dismantle a group or an enemy before they're able to respond, and because of that, the combat moves at a really great pace. Battles rarely feel drawn out unless you are facing something much stronger or you haven't found the right strategy yet, and the protagonist's biggest advantage is the ability to switch between different personas. Each persona has its own stats, and you can change your abilities depending on what the situation requires, and new personas can be acquired and combined through fusion, creating a system with an enormous amount of depth for anybody who wants to build the strongest possible collection. I will be honest, I did not engage with that whole persona system on a deep level. It just wasn't really for me. Most of the time, I selected personas based on whether they looked cool or had higher stats than whatever I was already using. When the game began presenting me with a dozen skills, resistances, and fusion combinations, I became overwhelmed and I just fell back on whatever seemed immediately useful. I happen to get option paralysis with games like this, so look, roast me in the comments or not, but I will say playing on easy helped me focus on the elements that I found most appealing. I could enjoy the battles, discover enemy weaknesses, and experiment with some different things without becoming stuck or spending hours creating an ideal build. I'm just not that kind of player. The easier difficulty also meant that I could just keep my attention on the story and the relationships and the stuff that I ultimately just cared about. That was why I continued pushing forward. But a good battle system can only carry a game so far. I mean, I've played plenty of other RPGs and JRPGs where the story is pretty subpar, but I enjoy the battle system, but eventually I just dip out. So the battles and the story work quite well together in harmony to just create a more robust experience, and I really liked that. And then there's the music of Persona 3. Maybe arguably the best part. Persona 3 has one of those soundtracks where nearly every location, routine, emotional state just has its own vibe. Going to school has a sound, walking around town has a sound, spending time in the dorm has a sound. TARDIS has a completely different energy, and every major story scenes are supported by music that immediately communicates how the mood has changed. I honestly can't think of a song that I disliked. Even the tracks that you hear constantly remained enjoyable because they became tied to the routine routine of playing the game. Music that initially felt like a catchy background theme eventually began carrying memories of locations and moments. And even now, when I'm finished the game post-credits, I'm still thinking about, walking around town or something that happens during a dramatic moment. The music direction is incredibly smart because it supports the central contrast at the heart of Persona 3 from moment to moment. The game can sound bright and energetic while the dark undercurrent remains present beneath everything. You might be walking through town, hanging out with friends, or deciding where to go after school, but death and despair are always sitting in the background. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the song Want to Be Close was the track that immediately pulled me in because that opening chord, that F chord, created such a, interesting response in me. It just felt really warm and nostalgic, but it also felt a little bit melancholy underneath. That combination perfectly represented Persona 3 to me. I mean, that game makes you feel comfortable inside its world while simultaneously reminding you, hey, that comfort does not last forever. And that may be the strongest aspect of the atmosphere in the game. It creates nostalgia for a time that I personally never experienced. By the end of the game, returning to the school or the dorm felt familiar, and hearing certain songs immediately brought back the feeling of settling into another day. Even on the very last day after the final boss, it was really hard to say goodbye and leave the school for the last time. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get choked up. I was very surprisingly emotional. I mean, knowing that this experience was about to end, but I didn't realize how it was going to end. Now, from this point forward, I'm going to discuss the final themes and the ending of Persona 3. So if you haven't finished the game and want to experience everything for yourself, I would suggest clicking away from this video. I would really recommend seeing the ending without knowing exactly what's going to happen and where it's going, because the final moments only work as well as they do after spending so much time with these characters. Persona 3 begins with the dark vibes, the dark atmosphere, but the true weight of its themes become much clearer as the story progresses. Characters are forced to confront loss and betrayal and the possibility that everything might ultimately be meaningless. The Dark Hour becomes part of a much larger confrontation with mortality and humanity's complicated relationship with death. Then, almost like 90% of the way through the game, the introduction of Nyx, who is the final boss and the bringer of the end of life on Earth, shifts the entire direction of the story and really kicked things up a notch for me. Everybody learns that something called the Fall is approaching and that this event may be impossible to prevent. It's going to end all life on Earth. They're presented with a choice between continuing to fight while knowing they may fail, or give up their memories and live peacefully until the end arrives. And this is where the relationships you've built become incredibly important. The members of SEES decide, we're going to fight as hard as we can because of the time that we spent together. And because of that, it's given a lot of their lives meaning. Even if the future is uncertain, those connections make it worth confronting what comes next. The game's themes could easily become overwhelmingly bleak, but Persona 3 never argues that life is meaningless simply because it ends. I mean, it says the exact opposite. Time has value because it's limited. Relationships matter because you can't have them forever. The possibility of loss is what makes the effort to connect with another person so important. And that message is reinforced throughout the entirety of the game with social links. The old couple struggling with grief, the little girl dealing with the changes in her family, Bebe fears losing the home and relationships he's found in Japan. I mean, these stories might seem unrelated to the battle against Nyx, but they all examine different ways people respond when something important may be taken from them. And once Nyx appears and you realize fate, like life as you know it is on the line, it recontextualizes the story in a really major way. Admittedly, I wasn't expecting Persona 3 to end the way that it did. After the final confrontation and the prevention of the Fall, the world returns to normal. Everybody basically loses their memories of the Dark Hour and everything they've experienced together, and ordinary life at school returns to normal as graduation approaches. And slowly these memories start returning. The group remembers the promise they made to meet on the school rooftop, and as they race towards the location while the protagonist rests beside Aegis, then the game ends with the protagonist peacefully passing away. The protagonist's death here isn't presented through a shocking twist, although maybe if you kind of read ahead, it might seem like, oh no, the guy dies, but it's almost ambiguous until you fully understand what has happened. The game allows the moment to breathe, and to be honest, I got a little choked up, which I really wasn't expecting. Persona 3 had been talking about death from the beginning, and the protagonist's final sacrifice to seal off Nyx using his life force, it just completed that discussion. He gives everything to protect the people he's grown close to, and he's lasted long enough to meet with his friends on the rooftop, and his final moments are spent peacefully beside somebody somebody who now understands the value of life and human connection. Your protection robot, really, it's ironic in a good way. And I know I haven't touched on all the characters in an intricate way, but chances are if you're seeing this, you understand the characters and their relationships, so you get it. Now, I wouldn't say the ending completely changed how I interpreted the previous 60 hours before that point. Instead, it just confirmed everything the game had been saying all along. The conclusion made sense because those themes had been present within the story, the atmosphere, and then the social links from the very beginning. Time is precious. Friendships and relationships matter. You should cherish people while you still have the opportunity. And then life goes on. So did Persona 3 Reload turn me into a Persona fan? Arguably, I'd have to say yes, it did. I started the game with very little understanding of what made this series so special. I expected turn-based JRPGs surrounded by high school activities and relationship building, that I knew, but what I found was a game where the daily routines and smaller relationships were just as important as the larger conflict. Persona 3 understands that people don't only become important during major life events, they become important through repetition. You see them every day, you learn their habits, you learn what their problems are, and then you realize, you know what, they really have become part of your life. I mean, this is why the ending works so well. Like I've said throughout the video, thematically at the forefront of the video is time and life and death. I mean, these are very real issues, and this is a very kind of mirror image of real life. So how the main character dies at the end, yes, it is sad, but it totally summarizes the story of the game. Life and death, things move on, life goes on. So you got to cherish the people that you have and the opportunities that you have while they're still in front of you, because before you know it, they might be gone. The music, battles, and supernatural mystery all contribute to the experience, but the ordinary days are really what gave Persona 3 its identity. Those afternoons after school, the conversations around the dorm, the study sessions, the smaller stories that were simply there to fill time between major events. They were showing you what the game was actually about. I started Persona 3 because one chord caught my attention. 60 hours later, it was the ordinary stuff, the people I met, and the time I spent with them that really stayed with me. And now finally, after playing my first Persona game, I understand why so many people love it as much as they do. So thank you so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave your comments and thoughts down below. What Persona game should I play next? Should I play Persona 5 Royal? Or should I hold out for the Persona 4 remake that's coming out sometime soon? Or should I just play one of the remasters or whatever that are out there now? I would love to know your thoughts. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on another video.